All remarks, comments, and opinions reflect the views of the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. The Town of Los Gatos, staff and council, is a public governmental organization and a completely separate entity. No town funds were used in connection with this activity.
Life gets ill, homie, we got bills. More than one kid, a boss we could kill. Aches and pains.
Okay, everybody, hello, and welcome back to PodCats LG in the wild. We are here again for just a few more minutes. For those of you that tuned in again, we're back at Loma Brewing Company. We're still at Loma Brewing Company, but we're doing another segment, part 2, season, episode 3, part 2. And I'm here with Catherine Summers. She is the executive director at the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce and just a woman about town who knows pretty much everything and everybody. If you want to know anything about this town, you can walk into the Chamber of Commerce anytime you like. They have an open door policy, and she will answer your questions. Whether she'll answer them honestly or not, though, that's another story.
That's not another story. I try to sit down with anybody. Any opinions people have, they come in and share those opinions with me, and I really listen and I give my opinions as well. You do,
I know, but you got to be a little bit careful, like you said on the last part. And I'm teasing you because one of the reasons I invited you to do this podcast with me, A, because you know everybody, and B, because you know everything that's happening in this town, but C, because I find you as somebody who does want to tell the truth and you want to know the truth.
And yeah, I do actually seek the truth. That's actually that's a good way of putting it. And I kind of find, not that I'm into astrology, but I am a Libra, if you didn't know. And I do think I really kind of do that balancing act. You know, I like to hear all sides.
Yeah, I know.
Of an issue before. And I think it's really important for everyone in town to hear both sides of an issue. Like a lot of these challenges we're talking about, you know?
Yeah, no, and this is why we started PodCats LG, because we both want to hear both sides. And all too often, I think that the voices that are heard, the loudest voices are the ones who are either well-funded, right? So they're the wealthiest voices, or they're just the most motivated by some other cause.
Yeah.
Right? They're not just general randos living in Los Gatos, going about their day, showing up for work, coming home, taking care of their kids, making dinner, washing, those voices aren't really in the mix, in my opinion, which is precisely why we want people to be listening to PodCats LG.
But you said, so answer your own question, how come those people aren't involved?
How come those people aren't involved?
Yeah,
why aren't those people involved? Because I know that, well, I'll tell you one reason we heard in our conversations with people is they think everything's fine.
Well, and they do, partly because, and I'll help you answer it, is I think because they're so caught up, rightly so, in raising their own kids or working full-time or, whatever it is, that they cannot spend that time to really dive into what's happening in their town. As long as as long as on the outside appearance's sake, everything's going okay, they're not going to dive in. It's only when they really start hearing that, whoa, there's a few cracks in the, fissures in the
facade.
In the facade, yeah.
But the facade also, I think the other reason is that you walk around town, you drive around town, you whatever you do, you go to the library, your kids go to the schools, you call the police. Everything actually works pretty well.
Yeah.
And so the town is working really, really well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have an amazing town here. I think one of the things I worry about is that, and having been here now and in this job for actually almost 9 years, is that you have I don't want to say like the older adults, because I really respect a lot of the older adults in this community, but I think we always have to keep in mind that as we get older, and I'm even finding this, and you and I joked about this the other day, is that you do kind of like things to stay the same. You like to have things the way they were when we were in our 20s and 30s, right? Or whatever. And I think that older, some of the older people in the community who are maybe in their 60s, 70s, they would like to keep everything the same. But the reality is you cannot keep everything the same anymore. We have to evolve with society and how,
But you and I also agreed that to some degree, I think everybody wants to keep things the same a little bit. I mean, the town has character. That's why we love it. It's cute.
Yeah. There's a real charm here for sure.
There's a real charm here.
But I am looking at some of the younger, younger people in the community. There's a few on the planning commission. There's a few running for council. And I think their viewpoints, we really have to listen to those viewpoints. I mean, gosh, when you look ahead at our kids having kids, I mean, this next generation is the group that is going to either save the planet or say goodbye to the planet. And I don't want to get too...
Well, but it's interesting because I think that, one of the people we're talking about here is Rob Moore, who's running for council. And I can't tell you how many people I've heard say, just right out of the box, we can't elect him. He's only 22, which is not true. Or
he's
we
23.
I think he's 24.
He's young.
But I mean, in governing any community, I think that young voice is absolutely essential.
Imperative.
Right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of like when we were talking about the dispensary conversation, and the kids had to leave the room when the guy from the dispensary came in to talk, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can't have kids in the conversation because we have to protect them from the conversation. When in fact, I think that's one of the most vital voices that we should be hearing.
Oh, yeah. No,
So I'm all for electing people that aren't rich. I'm all for electing people that aren't white. I'm all for electing people that aren't even white-collar workers, that aren't in tech. It'd be nice to have some people who are out there doing other interesting things because they bring a new, fresh perspective that I believe the town actually needs.
So let me challenge you on this then. Do you think that group that you just, described, you would like them to live in Los Gatos too, in possible affordable housing?
I'm somebody, but listen, I lived in very large metropolitan areas in my life, right? I lived in San Francisco, I lived in New York City, I lived in Copenhagen, I lived in Sydney, Australia. And so I'm used to having a wider mix of people around me. I grew up here in Los Gatos. I'm from here. And when I moved from here to New York City, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like that bubble is really white and really affluent. And I had no idea.
So if we had more of the, some of the workers, or if we had people of color living in Los Gatos, is it going to change the charm and the character of the town, do you think?
Not for me.
No.
Not for me. I don't think so. And if we had medium density housing on Los Gatos Boulevard, for me, it doesn't change the character of the town. I mean, come on. We had auto dealerships out there for the longest time. Those things were hideous.
Right now we have auto dealerships that are empty out there. I mean, really,
just vacant lots. Nobody seems to be really complaining about that. What they're complaining is about the idea that maybe housing would get built there. And of course they're complaining because, and the reasoning is, the impact of additional traffic and the concerns about wildfire and overpopulation and I get some of those arguments.
Yeah, no, so do I.
They do seem legit.
And I do think actually that some of those policies do need to be changed at the state level. And we as a Chamber of Commerce and as a town in our town government and other elected officials, we do need to be challenging the state legislators on what they're doing with these housing numbers and how they're mandating that towns like ours build, 2,200 units. I mean, and then that mandate does not come along with any money to help with the infrastructure that will be required to sustain those 2,200 units or whatever. So there is something to be said there. Reality is right now, this is what the state, the RENA numbers, as we've talked about before.
But give me specific numbers.
So
people don't know what you're talking about.
So every 8 years I think it was six cycles. I think maybe we're on our 7th cycle. The state has mandated that jurisdictions all over California build a certain number of new units to accommodate all different levels. There's below market rate, there's very below, very low, moderate low, medium, it's all different levels.
Right.
This is going to get really...
levels of affordability that aren't just high-end big mansions.
Correct.
Right.
And it is just to be able to, so that you have whatever places for people to live. It's not putting the homeless people into these houses, for example. I mean, it's really...
Somebody asked you that the other day, right?
Somebody did ask me
Does
that the other
affordable
day.
housing mean we're building housing for homeless people?
Yeah, and no, not at all.
Right.
Right. I work with a lot of the homeless people here in Los Gatos, or actually they come and help me with different projects I have.
Which, by the way, I got to commend you for just real quickly, that you actually put people you treat them like human beings. They come and help you. You put them to work. They're very kind. Every time anybody comes in and I interact with them, they're very civil and very kind. And I appreciate you for not just casting them off as though they're inhuman.
Wonderful. They're wonderful people.
Yeah.
But no, we're not building affordable housing for them. Most of them don't want the housing anyways.
Right.
And so
another conversation.
Yeah, that is another.
So there's these levels of affordability, right? Of course, everybody wants to build high-end homes here in Los Gatos. I mean, the developers want that. I'm sure a lot of home buyers. I know that a lot of home buyers want those high-end homes, but there is a mandate from the state that says we have to build X number of homes. What is that number X right now?
So right now, that number, I'm going to get it a little wrong, but it's 1,993.
Right,
plus
1,993. And then there's this buffer.
Yeah.
And that buffer could be as many as like another 1,000.
Yes.
Right? So it could be
it could be
up to 3,000.
Yeah.
And the reason that there's a buffer is because we need a little bit of wiggle room to be able to figure out where they go, how many units there are, and entice developers to want to come in and be able to use that flexibility to figure out how they're going to build those units.
Exactly.
And satisfy the state mandate, get the different levels of affordability built, and still make a profit.
Right.
So we need this little bit of wiggle room, but when I hear the opponents talk, they go immediately to the 3,000. Like every single one of those units is going to get built. In fact, from the conversations I've heard, I don't even think the 1,993 units are actually going to get built anytime in the next 8 or 10 years.
And nor do I, although that is something, so if you look at all the past RHNA cycles, we have barely even made a dent in what the state has required us to do.
We keep kicking the can down the road.
That is correct.
And there keeps being this mandate from the state,
right,
which keeps begging the question from my perspective, and I've asked this over and over and over again. What are the consequences of not getting these units built? What happens finally? And nobody seems to be able to answer this because every year they just kick the can down the road again. And I'm like, I thought there was a mandate. Doesn't a mandate mean that there's consequences?
Well, I do think the consequences are going to become more and more severe, if you will.
When?
I think perhaps out in this next RHNA cycle, I think this time we have to step up to the plate and like build new units. Exactly.
Or what?
Well, there's a whole letter came out.
Oh, the one that you wrote?
No, not the one that I wrote. But another one that tells what the consequences are if we do not build the housing. Now, one of the things that will happen if we don't build is that the state, and they're doing this in other jurisdictions, they can come in, it's called by right, and they can come in, and if we don't build what we say we're going to build, the state can come in, they can bring their and then the developers can build whatever they want.
So the state just comes in and gives them carte blanche and says, do whatever you want?
Correct.
I mean, come on, that can't be possibly the
No, that's possible.
Really?
And that then our own general plan and our own policies and ordinances and planning commission will have nothing to say about it.
So the state just comes in and overrides it. Do you really think that's possible, though? I mean, seriously, that sounds kind of draconian.
Well, that is actually one of my biggest fears, though. I mean, that's kind of what happened with the, that is what happened with the North 40, really, all intents and,
really?
At the end of the day, we, and I kind of use the phrase of like boxing us in. If we are so restricted in where developments can happen, then your window of possibility, you're narrowing that window of possibility, if this makes sense. And so, and then eventually they just have, the developer just has to build within that very narrow window.
And just hit the numbers.
Correct.
Just hit the numbers.
As opposed to, actually meeting with some of these developers, partnering, if, I like the word partnering better, and kind of working on a plan together for the whole town. I mean, that's really what a general plan is. It's like, okay, how are we?
But that's the plan that passed. That's the plan that passed. And according to your email, there was tons and tons and tons of work done.
Oh, so much outreach.
And yet the very, very smart people at Community Alliance continue to think that they're going to put this off and put this off and put this off. And I mean it when I say that the people at Community Alliance are smart.
Yeah, very.
So they must think that the consequences aren't that dire. they must believe that this draconian sort of consequence that you just mentioned is not actually possible. Otherwise, they wouldn't just be doing what they're doing because they're stalling this out. That's their tactic, is to stall it out. They just want to kick it down the road as far as they can. And they're smart. So they must know somewhere in their hearts that they can do this, that they can keep procrastinating and not actually wind up with any severe negative consequences.
Yes, I think you're right.
And so I come back around and think, well, then who cares? I mean, whether we build houses or not, right? I mean,
I think that's where it is. I mean, I don't want to live in a town where we don't make a valiant attempt to really try to build some housing that we need. I'm not saying we need, 3,000. I just want to open
the doors.
Yeah.
And welcome people in.
And welcome developers in to possibly build some of the housing that we've said we were going to build for 25 years.
And you think that we can also complement that with some infrastructure that doesn't lead to impacted traffic in schools? And
I do.
Yeah.
But I'm a optimist that way.
You're an optimist. You are an optimist. What? I think I've answered the questions that I wanted to get answered. I told you when we were on break that I wanted to get your worst fear. But your worst fear, I think, is...
Oh, my worst fear is that if we if we box ourselves in, I think that's really a good way of phrasing it.
Right.
If we limit our possibilities, then we will possibly lose the...
our right to choose.
Our right to choose, exactly.
Yeah,
that's a whole different topic, but okay.
No, but I mean, really, that
yes.
it is.
I would rather control.
And this is why we're talking about getting people involved, because it's the silent voices that somehow enable those people who are making a lot of noise to make these decisions, and then the silent voices do get boxed in.
And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that when we talk about, or in the general plan, there's that word upzoning. And so I
don't even want to get into upzoning.
But I'm not going to really get into upzoning. Okay. But what I'm saying is that upzoning is not that you're going to have high rises all over Los Gatos.
No.
Upzoning simply is opening the door to opportunity. It's allowing for things to possibly get built developed in various areas throughout town.
So if and when this becomes a ballot measure, the one thing I want to point out is do the research. Yeah. Don't listen to anybody that just tells you it's one way or the other, and especially the fearmongers who are out there saying it's going to be high rises, they're going to be slums, it's going to be people slinging hash out the front. I don't want to. Do the research, dig in, ask questions, attend council meetings, watch PodCats LG, hear the different perspectives about what's going on, because really what we're talking about is the opportunity to build more housing and the opportunity to have choices in how and where and what it looks like and how it gets integrated. Yeah. We want to keep that. We want to maintain that. We want to make those decisions for ourselves.
Exactly.
And some of the naysayers and some of the people who want to kick this can down the road potentially put us at risk for losing the option of choice.
You should maybe be running for council.
Brian Bernasconi for council. No, I can't. I don't live in the designated bubble.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not good enough for council.
But you just said we might need to repeat that and play that a second time, what you just said, because
it's the truth.
Right.
Just do your homework as a citizen. If it comes to become a ballot measure, get on it and do your homework and call it. Oh, speaking of which, what we want to do also is we want to get your feedback. If you have any ideas for topics that you want to hear about on PodCats LG, we'd like to hear about them. You can go to www.podcatslg.com. There's an email address there. You can send us an email and say, hey, Brian and Catherine, we want to talk about whatever, right?
Yeah, and we'll be pretty honest.
Hey, get on there and tell us how great the promenades were. Right? Mm-hmm. The Thursday promenades, or tell us how great jazz was, or tell us how great one of the bands at the promenades was.
Complications.
The Complications. Like, just write in and say, man, that one band, the Complications, killed it on Thursday. Or whatever. Music in the Park. We had a huge opening on Sunday.
Yeah,
Music in the Park on Sundays at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, and it's going till the 17th, I think, of this month.
So
August.
Please go on to podcatslg.com. click on that email address and send us a note. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Tell your friends that you're listening or watching PodCats LG. We want to get the word out. We want to get the conversation started. We want to have all this. And then the last thing I'm going to say is I would like to post your email onto our website.
Okay.
And I think that Catherine did a great job of pointing out, I mean, it's a long email, a lot of the points that people need to hear that aren't the Community Alliance points.
Right, the Community Alliance is not everybody. A lot of people feel the way that the Community Alliance feels, or they're just.
I don't want to slander them.
Yeah.
I just think that they have the loudest megaphone.
Yes.
I think that they've got the loudest megaphone, and so what I appreciate about your email is that you are providing other points of view, and so anybody who's watching or listening can go onto our website podcatslg.com and read your email and get a little bit of perspective that is not through the bullhorn of the loudest arguments.
Well, and again, those two sides are the two different perspectives are going to be really important if, in fact, this is on the ballot.
Especially if it gets on
Yeah.
the ballot, because the goal of getting it onto the ballot, in my opinion, is to potentially either appeal to people who aren't informed,
Right.
or to appeal to the people who are susceptible to the messages that they're going to back and fund.
Right. Right.
And so that's in my opinion, because the decision's already been made. The council already approved the general plan.
Yeah.
And the only reason it'd be going to the ballot would be to overturn that decision.
And I think, one last thing I wanted to say is I think the 3 council members who did vote in favor of passing the general plan, they worked long and hard, as did the GPAC, as did the Planning Commission.
As did the town staff.
As did the town staff. A very, very thoughtful decision that they made at the end. And
Right.
they compromised a lot.
And did tons of homework and tons of studies and got feedback from the community on multiple occasions, live meetings, mailers, surveys. I mean,
Well, and I think for them to be-
and this is all laid out
Yeah.
in your email.
And I think for them the council members in particular, to be made out to be almost villains, that they're trying to ruin the community or damage the character of the town is simply not true.
Not true.
Yeah.
And I'd like to give the same to staff,
Yeah.
the town staff. Everybody in their hearts really does want what's best. Now, we don't necessarily all agree all
Right.
the time, but everybody really does want what's best for the
Yes.
town. And so we certainly don't want to vilify anybody. I don't want the council members to be vilified or the town staff to be vilified. And I don't mean to vilify the Community Alliance, because I think they also want what's best for the town.
They do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I just know that I just know that they've got a strong platform and they're well organized and well funded. So I just want to make sure that the other perspective is out there as well, so that everybody gets the information that they need to make informed decisions.
Yep. I think
Catherine, you're the greatest. Yeah. I really love doing this with you.
So are you.
PodCatsLG.com. Go take a look if you want to read Catherine's manifesto here.
Oh,
Or if you want to get in touch with us and let us know topics that you'd like to hear in the future. We are open, we're listening, and we'd like to hear from you guys, okay? Thank you.
cheers.
Okay, see you.
Come together right now. Hit the ground running, ain't even a discussion. Hold up. Come together right now. Ain't no time for sleep. All we gotta do is come together.